Win over the Clippers. Chris Paul led the way for Phoenix with 41 points that included 7 3-pointers plus 8 assists and 0 turnovers. And now the 16-year vet will play for his first NBA title next week. Finally getting that shot. Fox Sports NBA analyst Chris Broussard is with us now. Chris, you actually had picked the Clippers to win yesterday, along with someone else I know at that table. So how surprised were you by Chris Paul's performance in the Suns' win?
Well, let me look. I know you guys are lumping me in with Skip to give him some comfort, right? So he's not alone.
Wrong.
I did pick the Suns to win the series in 7. So it's not that surprising that they go ahead and win it in 6. They're the best road team in the league this season. They're 6-2 on the road in the playoffs. And they had closed out the previous 2 series, now all 3 on the road. So they're a great road team. So that's not what's too surprising. But what's surprising is Chris Paul's performance. I mean, the 41 points, and I heard Skip say earlier, was probably the best game of his career, considering the stage and circumstances, and it's hard to argue with that. So I was surprised for 2 reasons by CP3. One, we know he hadn't been having a great series. He entered at shooting 32% from the floor. There was all the talk about, wow, CP3 is great, we get that. But the Clippers are better against the Suns when CP3 is playing. Like he's playing right into their hands with the slow tempo and all of that. So there was talk that he was going to get blamed if they lost this series. So that's number one. Number two, I've often watched Chris Paul in the regular season and the playoffs throughout his career and been like, man, be more aggressive. Look more for your shot. Look more to be a scorer at times. And he is such a pure point guard and such a floor general that he's always looking for everybody else. The last 3 years, he's only averaged 12 shots a game. Early in his career, he had a season with New Orleans where he averaged 11 shots a game. Like, he is not a guy that shoots the ball a lot, even though he's a very good shooter. And so I was glad that last night he actually came out and was looking for his shot, and it surprised me. And that run, we all know it. I know you guys have talked about it. In the third quarter, late, when he scores 8, after the Clippers go 10-0 to pull within 7, and Chris hits 2 threes, goes on a private 8-0 run to kind of put it away, so to speak, give him some distance. But he continues. He scored 23 of their 27 points in one stretch. And the 2 other baskets that he didn't have, he assisted on. That's one of the great playoff runs in recent memory. And so that surprised me. It's almost like Chris heard the chatter. He heard the talk, oh, they might be better this series with campaign. They need to play faster. Chris is hurting them. And he was like, I'm not going to let us lose this series. I will not let this be or stain on my legacy. So that was surprising the way he came out and played.
I agree with everything that you said, and that's what I told Skip. I was surprised. Now, we know he had it in him because we watched what he did in the Game 4 when they swept the Nuggets. He's on the road. He scores 37. But he had played well that entire series, so I wasn't surprised by that. But considering how he had struggled, he was 19 of 60 going into last night's ball game. Skip said that's 32%. I'm going to take his word for it. So how you go from 32%, you and D-Book, your first game back, y'all 10 of 40. The next game back, y'all like 12 of 44. You're struggling shooting the ball, and all of a sudden you go 16 of 24, 7 of 8 from 3. There was a game that you didn't make a 3. So I'm shocked that he was able to put this game together like this, considering how he had struggled in the previous 3 ball games. That's what's so surprising. Had he been shooting the ball well, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. But considering that he had struggled, not only from the 3, but from the floor, his turnovers. Remember how well he had played taking care of the ball against the Denver Nuggets? Well, he had started turning the ball over with a little more frequency. Last night he was spotless, 41, 8, and 4. With 0 turnovers.
Say that again. 0 turnovers?
0 turnovers.
God.
So he was spectacular. It was his greatest performance. And given the performance, given what's at stake, you don't. And everybody's like, well, he doesn't. Game 7 is not a guarantee. I don't care if it is in your building, cause you stepped on ankle. or a bad spill away from losing your best player, and all of a sudden everything goes haywire. But Chris Paul was phenomenal last night. I mean, think about that. Year 16, has there ever been a guy that's waited longer to be a lead and go to the NBA Finals? It's hard. I don't think there's ever been a guy, because even Karl Malone and Barkley, all those guys, they went earlier than year 16. That's for sure. But Chris Paul was sensational. That was a little old mini Bron run. You remember Bron went on that run against Detroit? You remember that, Chris? When he went on that little run? But he was only 22
Oh,
then.
yeah, I was in the building.
He was only 22.
I was in the building.
He didn't even have his driver's license.
Really?
Yeah, Glory hadn't even taken him to get his driver's license yet.
Whatever happened to LeGarn James? I was wondering.
He waiting on Kawhi and Paul George to go on a trip vacation together. They got an Airbnb in Cancun.
Well, I thought he was waiting for the Space Jam ripoff to come out.
Yeah, don't do that, Skip.
Didn't they have some party at Magic Mountain?
You a hater. I'm going.
You were not invited.
I'm going to see that thing.
Really?
Yeah.
But you didn't go to the pre-party.
It was going on when we were here. It was yesterday.
Okay.
We were working. We had to work. I can't miss you.
Okay, thank you for that. My turn. In my career, in my life, I don't think I've ever been, like you said, surprised. It's way beyond surprised by one man's performance, because I was blindsided by it. I was shell-shocked. I was flummoxed. I was gobsmacked. It just came out of nowhere. The least likely outcome last night was that Chris Paul would take over the game and score 41 points. And then I was even more dumbfounded after the game when Chris Paul tells Rachel Nichols on ESPN, oh, and on top of everything that was going on, I had to get an MRI on my wrist. And I'm thinking, what MRI? And then I read USA Today, and it is reporting Chris Paul has a torn ligament in his shooting wrist. What? So does that explain some of the horrendous shooting that we saw in the previous 3 games when, as you pointed out, he was 19 of 60, which is 32%, 2 of 16 from 3 in the previous 3 games, including in the last 2, 0 of 9 from 3.
Wow.
And it looked to me like Chris Paul, as he begins to age, he was laboring to even get the ball home from 3, like he had to kind of force it to get it all the way up to the rim, until last night when he was just willing in threes. He made 7 of 8 threes. That's impossibly great, especially with, as Chris points out, the weight of the NBA world on his shoulders, one of which got hurt against the Lakers, and he couldn't shoot at all. He couldn't even throw it up sideways. Then he gets COVID to start this series off, and I don't know what the symptoms were. He was vaccinated, but did it bother him? Did it hurt his wind a little bit? I don't know, but they won 2 games without him, and it started to look like they should play Cameron Payne a little more. Maybe play them together, which they tried for a little while last night. But it started to look like he might be losing his job to Cameron Payne. What? And then that happened, and once he got going in the 4th quarter, he was just out of his mind.
Yeah.
Just like, I got this. Give me the ball again, I'll shoot it. And he's not, as Chris points out, a selfish shooter or scorer.
Yeah.
But he was last night.
Yeah, he's not a one-on-one takeover guy like a Dame Lillard or like a Steph Curry.
No.
He's not that type of guy. Like you said, Chris, he is a textbook, old school, John Stockton, Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd point guard.
Pass first.
I'm going to pass it first.
Yep.
And if I score 10, 15 points, okay, good. But I'm going to make sure I'm going to have 10 or 11 assists. That's what he's looking to do. Last night, he started hunting people. Nicola Batum, come here. Give me that. Hey, Pat Bev, you want some of this too?
Yeah.
Marcus Morris, I got some for you also.
DeMarcus Cousins, I got you.
Yeah, Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
It didn't matter last night, and that's the thing. These guys are so good, Chris. If you let one of these guys get into a rhythm, once they get into a rhythm, I don't care who the defender is. The rim is too big for the ball not to go in. They're just going to start anybody. It doesn't matter. It happened to Paul George in game 5? It didn't matter. You let him get in the rhythm, and it was basically the same thing. They both had like 10 points. Paul George had 11 points. Chris Paul had 10 at the half, and then he goes and gets 31 like Paul George went and got 30. It's crazy.
What?
It was crazy to watch Chris Paul, because I've never seen Chris Paul actually hunt his shot like he was hunting it last night.
Right.
Go ahead, Chris.
Only one time. He's played 123 playoff games. Only one time has he taken more than the 24 shots he took last night. He took 25.